Is Michelle on her way to? Oh, whoops. She's traveling, right?
She's traveling, I believe.
Yeah.
All right. Quentin's phone box, although phone box is a different thing than what I'm seeing here, is, oh, did we just lose Caroline? We just lost Caroline. Oh, and she's back. Good. All right. Quentin, remember, this is a combined technical and stand-up. So what do you got?
Okay. So first day of classes, didn't make a lot of progress on any assembly line stuff then, but I've been working with Bryce. I think we're going to try to advance filling out a couple of the APIs and make some progress on that, I hope, today. And one of those being the payment gateway. I hope we can have a chance to check in this week. So I'm going to familiarize myself a little bit more with some of the back-end Java side. Mostly been focusing on fairly discrete pieces of that before. So I'll have to get into that a little bit deeper, or the Python side, to help with that piece. And last week, released the fee waiver for Aleo, and got some feedback from Matt about that I'll the triage and look through as well. This week we had a chat with Illinois, and they had some ideas for things that we kind of knew we had to make customizable. So we'll move those up our priority list a little bit more to get done so that they can customize some more of the text that goes on screen. But that's pretty much it.
Cool. Following up on that, since we'll just sort of flow in thematically, Bryce, what do you got?
Yeah. So I've filled in a lot of the APIs on the REST side. There's at least, like, I've counted, and there's like 4 that I haven't implemented, like 2 of those being like 4 of like 66, 2 of those being like payment stuff, which I was trying to work out for a bit. I have all like the pieces in place, but there are some like just technical web things that I might need to ask some questions about, which if we have some time, I might try and ask. And then I sort of took some time today to try and go through a lot of the what's going to happen at certification, like their certification steps.
Yep.
And once again, I am sort of like might need someone else's help to like try and figure out, okay, is this useful or relevant, or do we think that this is like we can sort of suggest that we're doing? There's a lot of very specific things, like whether or not password questions are actually deprecated or not, because that says in some parts of the documentation that they are deprecated. They don't matter. We can send them like blank strings in both the password question and answer, and they don't handle it. And I don't know if they still require us to handle them on our side when we're implementing. Overall, there's just like a lot of small things of like, oh, do we need to tell users that they're locked out through the REST API, or can we just say that your login didn't work through the REST API? And like, how much do we need to just pass back all of the stuff that Tyler is showing us? And so a lot of small questions like that, but I'm sort of still making progress, and am like currently still trying to flesh out all of the code checking and stuff, which I figured just is another checkbox or another thing to check out of the way, and I will try and wrap up soonish this week. But sorry, that was a lot. But essentially, I think the bigger thing is at some point I might need David and Quentin, whenever y'all have time to best, to just sort of like sit down and be like, what do we want to do?
Why don't you queue up those questions? And I mean, unless Quentin can meet with you earlier, but queue up those questions and we can deal with them at our sync up meeting tomorrow.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that'd be a good time. Cool.
And I don't know how relevant it is to everybody, but there might even be time teaching Tuesday, which I know I've blocked off already. I think I have other questions come up. It'll be less relevant to a lot of the people, but still.
It's true. Since we have the time blocked, it might be a good time.
Okay, we'll see if we have people at teaching Tuesday. Otherwise, no tactical things right now. So that's it.
All right, Caroline.
I think I just have stand up, nothing tactical. Unless mass legal help disappears and we shut the whole website down. So I guess Sarah has asked me to do some plain languaging. So I just sent this morning. And I think there are a couple people I need that are in the Trello and they're ready for me to do it. So I hope to get that this week and then find some time. I might try and do the translations for 209A depending on Quentin. And then, maybe we can either finish them together or maybe we can, I think there was some discussion last week about Michelle might have had a couple of outstanding I think we sort of have to go through it and figure out where we are and what the next push is going to be. Oh yeah, but then there was the thing about, so did you guys, you've just started, so we haven't identified people to do the PDFs, but we're thinking we're not going to use. Did you make a decision about whether you want to submit just English only 209As or what? That's sort of where we are about the 209A thing. I suppose we should use a Trello card for that, or you want to use a Trello card or GitHub issue for 209A on that?
Here's a question about.
So we haven't had our first Lit Fellows meeting yet, so we could definitely raise there. I imagine nothing would happen before like a couple weeks if we went that route, so that could help decide.
Okay, all right. So we'll just wait on that. I mean, we still can do the import of the spreadsheet and get that going, and then we can decide what we're going to do about going live or not, given your Lit Fellow interest in the PDFs. Is that what the decision is? We
haven't had a chance to check in and see anything, and because they're meeting on Thursday for the first time.
Okay,
I would
Thursday.
say like we could just start with English only. We don't have to like announce, hey, it's available in more languages at that point. So it's not really like it's not cutting off our option to do a launch with the translated documents.
Okay. All right, we can do that. Do we just remind me, is Aubrey coming back or is she done?
She's coming back, but not in the same role.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we don't have anybody, helping us review all the Trello cards. Do you think we ought to do a Trello card for the 209A so we can keep track of, spreadsheet translation and PDF translation and that kind of stuff?
I think I would probably check it more if it were on GitHub.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it on Trello.
Is the 209A doesn't already have a Trello card, or some subsets of it don't already have Trello cards?
Or it might not
I'm
be
just
up
curious.
it might not be up to date. I mean,
If it was, it would be in live. But if it sounds like these are more issues. These are more GitHub issues. They're talking about changes to existing stuff.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then all right. So, okay, that's fine. I'll just remember that it's on GitHub then. That's the way we've been operating on 209A all along. So maybe it doesn't make sense to switch gears on that.
I don't think that the Trello works really well when we have when we're going through the defined workflow to know where we are. This seems to be the part of the defined workflow, which is deal with issues. So I think the natural location is GitHub.
Okay. All right. So that's, and I have, we've just about finished. I mean, we just need a final SME review of a new motion, proposed order, and request for financial statement. A motion and proposed order for spouse to pay help with attorney's fees, and then a request for a financial statement. It will be, so it's going to be one package, but that would be, I think it's going to be fairly straightforward for students to do. It's not tricky. You don't have to decide who the parent, you do have to decide who the plaintiff and defendant are. So I can add that. And then one of these days I'll go review Lily's financial statement. So we can, but I think they can be standalone to start off with. And then eventually merge the financial statement in with that.
All right.
I mean, that just reminds me that we carve out some time to talk about potential new
forms. Yeah.
new forms.
Yeah. Well, why don't we can explicitly say that we'll come back next week and with thoughts on that to the management meeting. So let's explicitly say that next week we will.
I actually will not be at our next management meeting. I'm on vacation. But
well, then maybe actually that's not the best time to do it. We still have a little time because people need to pick projects immediately. So how about we do it the subsequent meeting? If we want to have.
I mean, that's like the day after Labor Day, right? So we won't have had class that day before.
And then
that should work.
The other nice thing, and I can't remember what the other nice thing. Oh, the other thing is not necessarily a nice thing, is that doesn't preclude us from having conversations in other, sort of like Suffolk-based conversations about that for our class. But to the extent that we want to evolve the assembly line, we can bring that back here on that next management meeting. So not the next one, but the one subsequent. So this is the 24th. That would be, yes, the 7th. So exactly as you said, after the holiday. All right, cool. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me continue to hang out as I will finish this forum before I graduate in December. It is.
We're going to hold you to that.
I am so dedicated. This has been, I think, the slowest but steadiest forum progression as we go on way too many months, but it is ready for plain language review. I figured out the GitHub issue. So I have to retrace my steps, but when I set it up, so there's automatically like commented out code at the top, it seemed like. And then when I did something, it uncommented everything, but that top line needed to be commented in order for it to work. So it like so that's where I was hitting a weird snag. So if that issue comes up in the future, I also could have just done something wonky. But yeah, I'm ready for plain language review. Caroline, it seems like you have a lot going on, so no worries. I'm here until December. But yeah, if there's anything that I can help with in the meantime, let me know. I'm always willing to help as I kind of wait. I'm happy to wait out the plain language review because I know you have a lot going on. But yeah, that's my update.
Cool. All right, Lisa, anything you'd like to share?
Hey, everybody. There is one thing that's happening later today that some of you guys may know about, y'all. It's the LHI Law Help Interactive group is having their bi-monthly call, and they're going to be covering, I guess, the evolution of family forms or divorce forms, I believe. How and creative ways for addressing that and how it's kind of changed over time. That's at least what I'm pretty sure the topic is based on the emails. I was kind of catching up and I signed up for it. And the bi-monthly call usually covers some housekeeping as well, but it's today at 1 o'clock. I'm assuming some of you may be on that listserv, like maybe Caroline, I'm not sure. So yeah, y'all have that information, but they always have a nice and different perspective. And now it's broadening out because people aren't just using hot docs and A2J. There are so many other things out here, including DocAssembly based platforms. So I'm really interested to see what people have to say.
Cool. All right. And then let's see, from my end, like Quentin, the new school year is starting up. Things for us to keep in mind. We'll have new students coming on, but they'll probably come in sort of more of a trickling manner as opposed to all at once, given the nature of how people pick projects and do things. We are tentatively thinking about having one of those groups work on the 258E. They will, however, be starting with sort of research intensive projects to figure out the difference between the needs of the 258E and the 209A. So originally won't be doing a bunch of code yet. And they are a 1 semester cohort. And the expectation would be that would be a relay race where they would be doing a couple of easy wins now, mostly around research-based deliverables, and then handing that off and preparing that for people to come in next semester to continue doing more with the 258E. I had a call with Elizabeth Serta and Meg DeMarco earlier in the week about the project in General Land's relationship with the trial courts. They are checking on the reality as it was explained to me, which was basically that regardless of what the MOU says, the current working of the trial courts is that each of the divisions has sort of decided whether or not they will or won't do things. And so we are trying to get a hold of who is doing what. This is mostly in relation to the fact that we recognize that some people were getting bounce backs when they were filing their affidavits of indigency in one specific court. And so the question is, and those bounce backs were worded in such a way that it was ambiguous as to whether or not action was being taken on those filings. So we are trying to clarify that ambiguity so that we then know how to respond appropriately. That being said, we had a discussion about longer term stuff. It seems that they are interested perhaps in advocating for the idea of the third-party EFSPs being allowed to send things in, which at the end of the day, I think is the ideal. Well, one of the primary things I'd like to see come out of this partnership is a recognition of the value added of having these things available for true e-filing. They were less sanguine on the notion of a continuing content development partnership, primarily because of the reasons that we've identified, which is that they have a really hard time deciding what they feel comfortable telling people about things, which it is frustrating that it is somehow contentious to explain things in a way that people can understand them. But I understand the reality of their internal politics. So that was sort of that. And otherwise, we're moving along with appeals stuff very nicely. There's a great working relationship there. And that's sort of what I got. We got a couple minutes if people want to pepper questions or stuff or ask anything there. Oh, and then I would just like to ask, and then first I'll pause. Any questions about anything I just said there?
Well, I guess one question is, did you get any sense of how their advocacy for third-party EFSP would work? Like, is there a say like, there are people in the court who they have to convince who don't think it's a good idea or don't think it's possible, or is it just like to prioritize it?
I think they have identified the same person to convince as we have, which is the new CIO. Yeah. They had expressed that they're really busy right now just trying to figure out what's going on. The main framing that they were kind of interested in, and this is not my framing, this is their interest in the framing, was that by talking up the EFS, because we went back and forth a lot because there was a lot of conflation of issues. And so we had to very clarify that there's a distinction between opening up third-party EFSP and building forms together that the court somehow puts their stamp of approval on. And making it very clear that like opening up third-party EFSP is not requiring the court to do any work of like approving what those forms look like or anything like that. You're just opening a mailbox. And they find that very palatable because then that avoids one of the primary hurdles that they've had for a long time, which is, like approving the forms. And so they're trying to sever that such that they can say, no, you don't need to approve these forms. You don't need to do this. Just let them, just don't get in the way. Let them do this work for the Commonwealth. So that's sort of the tenor of that. I still maintain that it would be nice to have a relationship where there could be some coordination so they could, link to things and whatnot. They're still very trepidatious about that. But it does seem like we are at least aligned on the notion of open up EFSPs, people then can do what they want to do and file it with the court. So that to them seems like a defensible position. That's separate from the other conversation, which is sort of there.
Yeah, obviously having links in context is great, but It's might be helpful to point out what Texas and California do, where they just have a list of like, here are all the third-party suppliers, and then
I think that
text on their site.
Yeah, I think very likely that's what something would end up being. I mean, I imagine that would be you can't, well, I guess you could do anything, but in all practice I've seen, when there's set of third-party FSPs, there's always a list of them somewhere. And so, I suspect that would be the case. It's just sort of a question about the deepness of the in context. As you're saying, links in context would be nice, but having said that, was that. Then my question was for Bryce. I saw David Benton got back with the JeffNet stuff. So that
I don't know why I
seems like,
forgot to mention that. That was very tactical. Yes.
oh, very tactical. Yes. Well, we sort of conflate. We now combine the meetings. Tactical. So I just saw that the email came in. I didn't really see what its response was. Is there any action required on our end for anything that he said?
Yes, there'll be a little bit of just technical grabbing, because originally he was just passing us a like transaction ID and status of what it actually was, and now there's going to be a text and a URL that is, if necessary, like the link to the site to go pay. But otherwise, it's just two more things that we will honestly just pass through the email. So it's a relatively simple change. It is just a change that will need to be done. And it sounds like he'll include the link in the text body about the affidavit of poverty that Amanda had done, that we sent him. So
do we then think that we're ready to give them a set of test accounts on the test server for their clerks to kick the tires and play with things? I mean, as soon as you implement that, pass through on the message.
Yeah, probably.
The context here is I'm getting questions from Pew about timetables for things. So
Yes,
I wanted to be able to make sure that I could give updates about where we were at with things. So
yeah, so I guess just for a sanity check, because it's like one of those things of like, yes, on a surface level we are, but if we like this last email we had to send him, we had to dive a little bit deeper into actually. We had to dive a little bit deeper into what they we're diving a little bit deeper was how we figured out, oh yeah, we might need to also like provide the affidavit of poverty. What are we sending back in the email? And so like it might just help to do a sanity check of like all of the steps that we would need.
Well, the other thing is this is just talking about giving them access to the test environment so they can kick the tires and maybe figure out their internal training, which then also seems entirely like in keeping with the idea of, yeah, we might notice some stuff that we still want to, like, we don't need to make sure everything's entirely buttoned down before we give them access to test, because we're testing. Yeah. So I think the main thing here for them is if the main structure of the workflow is in place and we're happy with Amanda's forms and the integration is there, then just giving them that. And so I'm just for context, for people who weren't on other calls, the last time we met with them well, not in person, but in virtual, the idea was that they were going to want some time for their clerks to get accustomed to what things would look like when they came over. So they wanted to actually be able to see what exactly those filings would look like, so they could develop their own internal processes of like, when this comes in, then we're going to, we'll send this over here, or do this over here, or whatever their internal processes are going to be. And so we said that once we had those forms locked down and the integration, we'd give them test accounts so they could kick the tires and develop those processes. So if we're at a good space, I mean, so the point is it's not gonna be live, and we'll be very clear with that about them. It's like, this is not live. You're the only people who know where this test server lives. Your folks can feel free to make accounts and send stuff through and see what the results look like on their end. And let us know, what you find and how it goes. And then that would be great because I could then, as soon as we had that, I could report to Pew that they're doing that. And then the context here is that in September, there are 2 different meetings take place. One with Amanda's forms group, which is sort of like the group that's thinking about forms and how they should be structured in the state. And she's going to showcase the form she's built. And then one later, which I think is the Supreme Court's meeting about stuff. And what we wanted to do was then flag for them that it was all ready, but for putting it on their servers. And so we wanted them to be able to think about that. And then I guess the open question is, to what extent we should ping the Supreme Court people again to make sure that their servers they're getting what they need to get those servers set up. And I know there was someone who's been mentioned as someone who needs to set up API keys on there. So do we know how that is, and can we reach out to them to make sure they have what they need? Or
I believe we got their name. I don't know if we have got their information though.
Yeah, I guess we should check to see if we want to have that done pre-launch or if we want to launch with just our server and have that be something we follow up on afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's the question. I have a feeling that my suspicion is that the Supreme Court will not want to do a real launch until it's on their server, because that is what the MOU says. So we'll probably be in some sort of testing launch until they actually have some place where they can host it. That is my very, very, very strong suspicion based upon signed documents. I understand that realities change and they, but I do not suspect that they will have changed enough to.
That's probably fine, but where does that stand for our deliverables, do you think?
Well, I think that depends. And that's one of the reasons why I want to ping the Supreme Court folks to see where their APIs are, right? So like if their server's up and it just needs a couple of well, this is another question. To what extent do the existing forms from Amanda's group rely upon those APIs, any of these third-party APIs?
We would rely on Google Maps. I was gonna say, actually, I think the divorce needs to be integrated, which should be straightforward. But at least for the name change, all it was needed, which name change is a lot simpler, but all it needed was Google Maps or the Maps API for addresses, which is not strictly necessary. Very nice, but not strictly necessary. I don't know and I haven't gone through the divorce, but I don't think the divorce would be using any fancier APIs than the Google Maps one.
We could double check and make sure there's like no code that expects things to be geocoded anywhere. Although I think we at least got rid of some of the failure states there.
Yeah.
Because you had been testing it locally, right? And you didn't have Google Maps locally.
Yeah, that's a lot of where my testing has been. I think
And know that
at least she has it choosing courts manually. So
the email feature, which we show on every screen, like on the end screen for every interview, that won't work. Obviously, they don't have email set up. So, but that was an API. They were going to set up a local SMTP server and make sure everything was connected there. We just never got the credentials for that. So that's something that I think IT was going to do. IT very explicitly did not want to deal with any other API stuff. They said, "Oh yeah, we'll save that for this other person who's been our consultant."
I'm pretty. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. I'm pretty sure they're unveiling this at. I was supposed to be out of town during this, but the SRL meeting, the joint Access to Justice Committee, Access to Justice Commission, various committee meetings. There's a joint tech and self-represented litigant meeting, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be unveiling that.
That's the first Amanda meeting I was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's coming up. But I'm also wondering, do you know how much end user testing they've done yet? Or
again, you cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying, do you know how much end user testing they've done? Because I'll probably hear about this or read about it in the minutes once they announce things, which, I mean, I've got a little bit of a jump on it because I participate in this group and I see you guys doing stuff on that. But I was just curious about that, what their user testing plan was or what they were doing with that.
That's probably a question for Amanda, because
Yeah.
her group's the one who's actually building the interviews.
Yeah. And I think they circulated some forms a long time ago. I don't recall circulation of the name change forms, but frankly, the 24th JDC had a really good form for a long time. So they had a nice base to work off of. And they had a bunch, and there's so many family forms that have been floating around for so long that they have kind of an embarrassment of riches. I mean, they can just kind of cherry pick. So that's a good place to be in. So, but I'll look forward to seeing what, how this all shapes up. It sounds really exciting.
Yeah. So maybe for action items, then we just need to touch base with the IT folks again and make them clear on our timetable. So what I'll do then, if we think IT was going to do, the only thing we expected IT to do was to set up the SMTP server. Is that right?
And they have a SMTP server. They had to configure some ports. And I think we did that when we were on our call. But we didn't then take those credentials and put them into the DocAssembly config.
Okay.
So that's something we have to check.
Okay, well, we had flagged for them that we had wanted to do testing in August. So here it is, August. Because I don't think they're going to say, okay, tomorrow load up the interviews. So I'll say we have the interviews just about ready. We'd like to do integration testing on the actual production server. I will float the option that we could continue to host for a reasonable amount of time, if but I don't want to make it too. I'll just say we're ready to do the testing, and we'll see where they're at, because IT is not the decision makers on certain things. That other people that I would float there, which actually makes me think that what I'll do is actually I'll send a broader email to the group we've been dealing with the judge, including IT and everyone, and just an update as to our status, as to where we are, because that actually will, having the judge on that email will get some action. So, yeah, that generally works. Okay, so I'll do that email to them to move that forward. Look at us being all tactical on our Tuesday. Okay. And then the second part of that then is just, when do you anticipate having these the Tyler stuff? Where do we stand with that? What's the next milestone?
There's still a decent amount of like crossing like the main structure is there for everything, but there's still a decent amount of like dotting the I's and crossing the T's, which I am like trying to just go full force on. But at least my plan was, which is maybe less likely now, but I would really like to have at least everything like laid down straightforwardly enough that it's just like, I need to work on this for maybe a few more days. And when everything is just laid out, and like we're confident that we can pass certification with that little bit of straight ahead laid out work, then reach out to Tyler and be like, hey, like we will be ready for certification. You on these particular things, what do y'all want to do? So
all right. So I think it'd be safe to represent then that we're expecting to put in Tyler for certification in September. I think that's the safe statement. Yeah. That's the safe statement. Yeah. And then I know you have this internal soft goal of wanting to get to that like layout stage by the end of August, but that's fine. That can be in our internal. Okay. So I'll touch base with Louisiana, and I'll inform Pew a bit of stuff. All right, cool. Anything else people have for tactical or stand up?